Okay, in this lesson we're going to be talking about slope. By the end of this lesson you should be able to find the slope of a line using a table, a graph, 2 points, or an equation. Slope is what tells us how steep something is or how fast something is increasing or decreasing. We often look at different slopes, like when you go skiing or snowboarding. We know that the bunny slope, which is less steep, doesn't go as fast for as maybe a black diamond slope. So it kind of gives you an indication of where you should begin. When we talk about different roller coasters, often the roller coaster that is steeper has a faster acceleration, and so for some people that can result in having more fun. So slope, when we talk about slope, slope is how steep a line is. So when we talk about our linear relationships, it tells us how steep the line is. Our slope also tells us the direction in which our line is facing. We have positive and we have negative slopes. To determine the slope of a line, you have to have 2 points. So we look at 2 points that are along that line, and we look at how to get from one of those points to the next point. So how we're getting from one point to the next. That is how we're determining slope. Slope is going to be expressed as an integer, so that's a positive or a negative whole number, or as a fraction. And when we're expressing it as a fraction, it's important that we leave it as an improper fraction, because that will help us later down the road with graphing with slope. Slope that has the greater absolute value, whether we're looking at a positive or a negative slope, the slope with a greater absolute value means the steeper of the two lines. When we're finding slope, we are looking at vertical change over horizontal change. We have various different ways of finding slope. Again, we can find slope from a table, we can find slope from a graph, from just a couple of points. We could also look at an equation. No matter which method we're using or which modality we're using to find slope, we are always looking at this vertical change over horizontal change, also known as change in y over change in x. Now you see in the corner here we have this triangle ny and triangle nx. This triangle means change in, it's our delta symbol, but it means change in y over change in x. It's a shorthand way of finding the change in y over change in x. This change in y over change in x is where we get our formula for slope, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Because we're looking at the change, we're looking at the differences between the two y values over the differences between the two x values. Now, depending on the ordered pairs that you're using, you have two ordered pairs. Either y in the ordered pairs can be y2 or y1, but be consistent with the x's. And what we mean by that is if you're pulling y1 from one point, the x1 has to come from that same point. And then when we're graphing using slope, we're looking at that fraction. Okay, so if it's an integer, you want to write the integer as a fraction. Remember that you can make any integer or whole number a fraction by placing it over 1. And you're going to be looking at the numerator and you're going to be looking at the denominator. The numerator is going to tell you if we're moving up or down to get from one point to the next. And the denominator will tell you whether to move left or right to go from that one point to the next. So if we're looking at one point on the line is 1, negative 2, and we know the slope is 2/3, our slope of 2/3 tells us to go up 2, because it's a positive 2, and go right 3 because it's a positive 3. So from 1, 2, from our point here, we would go up 2 and to the right 3, up 2 and to the right 3, and we would continue that pattern all the way throughout the graph. Now, if we wanted to go the other direction, if we wanted to get points that were before 1, negative 2, then we would just do the exact opposite, which would be to go down and to the left. That would be saying negative 2 over negative 3, which we know a negative over a negative is a positive. So 2/3 and negative 2 over negative 3 are the same thing. So this would be going down 2 and right 3. So down 2, 1, 2, right 3, 1, 2, 3, which would put us at negative 1. And then as you're connecting your points there, as you're drawing your line, make sure that you draw your line through your points, and what you should get is a linear relationship. Okay, let's look at a couple of examples. So we're finding the slope of a line that passes through each pair of points. When we're looking at our pair of points, remember that we're looking for the change in y over our change in x. And so here, because we have 2 points, this is where we want to use our slope formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if we look at our points, I like to label my points, but again, remember that any point can really be x1 and x2, and any point can be x2 and y2. So any point could, either one of these points, they could be flipped. So if I'm using my formula, I know that my y2 is 9 minus my y1, which is 5, over my x2, which is 4, minus my x1, which is 3. 9 minus 5 gives me 4. 4 minus 3 gives me 1. And so I know that I get a slope of positive 4. When we look at B, we're doing the same thing. Again, I can label my points. Again, I don't have to, because any point could be, this point could be x1, y1, but it could have also easily have been x2, y2. That is really up to you. But I like to label them just so that I have some consistency there, just so that I know where I'm putting the numbers in my formula. That way I know that these end up being in the same spot. The x and the y end up being in the same spot in my fraction. So my y2 here would be 2. My y1 would be 4. My x2 would be 6. And my x1 would be negative 2. Make sure that when you're dealing with the negative that you still write your minus and then you write the negative, because that will change the value if you don't. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. 6 minus the negative number, 6 minus the negative would be the same thing as saying 6 plus 2, and that would be 8. And then we can simplify this fraction as negative 1 over 4. So for A, the slope is 4. For B, the slope is negative 1/4. And A would have the steeper slope because 4 has a greater absolute value than 1/4, or negative 1/4. We look at from a table, again, we're looking for the change in the y's over the change in the x's. I can use the slope formula here, but from a table we don't necessarily have to. We know that in our table, the first column is x, the independent, which is hours. Time is always independent. The quantity is our dependent. So the first column is usually x, the second column is usually y. So if I'm looking at my changes in my y's here, from one y to the next, from 1 to 2, that's plus 1. From 2 to 3, that's plus 1. From 3 to 4, that's plus 1. There's my change in my y's. My changes in my x's, from 3 to 6, that's plus 3. From 6 to 9, that's plus 3. From 9 to 12, that's plus 3. And so our change in y, if we're looking at change in y, our change in our y values was 1. Our change in our x's was 3. So my change in y over change in x is 1 over 3. So we're doing the slope formula, but we're just representing it a little bit differently. Looking at B, and again, looking at change in y to change in x. Again, remember that hours, time is our independent, that's x. Miles, our quantity, is our dependent, which is y. And we're going to look at our change in x to change in y. Our change in y, we're increasing by 70 each time. Our change in x is increasing by 2 each time. So change in y, which is 70, over change in x, which is 2. 70 over 2. This can be simplified so that it becomes 35. So slope here is 1/3. Slope for B is 35. B has a greater slope because it has a greater absolute value. Looking from the graph, again, we're looking for change in y over change in x. From a graph, we're looking at vertical change over horizontal change. This is our change. Okay, so vertical, the up or down movement versus the left and right movement. Okay, so I picked 2 points. Remember, we only need 2 points, so my 2 points that I'm picking, I'll pick these 2. Make sure that you're looking at your scale for a graph. Make sure that your x's and y's are going by ones. Otherwise, you're going to be counting by something that's different. So my x and y's are going by ones here. So to get from this point to this point right here, I go up 1, so that would be a change of positive 1, because I was increasing, I was going up. And I'm moving to the right 1, that would also be a change of positive 1, as I'm moving up 1 and to the right 1, as I'm increasing in both directions. So the slope for A would be positive 1. When we look at the slope for B, again, we're looking at change in y over change in x, so we're looking at vertical change first, the up or down change, and then we'll look at the left and right change. So from this point to this point, we move down 2. So since I'm moving down, I'm decreasing, that's a negative 2. And then I'm moving to the right 1. That'd be a positive 1 because I was moving to the right, I was going forward, increasing by 1. So my slope is negative 2 over 1, or negative 2. In this case, B has a greater slope because the absolute value of negative 2 is greater than the absolute value of 1. Alright, when we're graphing, we want to graph a line that passes through the point 1, 1 with the slope of 1 over negative 3, or negative 1/3. 1 over negative 3 and negative 1/3, or negative 1 over 3, are the same. Both of them have a negative slope. Both of them are 1 over 3. So if there's a negative, the negative can go either in the top or in the bottom. Doesn't matter where you place it. Both of them are helpful. They'll be able to help get our line going in both directions from that point 1, 1, but they both have a negative slope, so they're going to be the same. So we start our point at 1, 1. If we look at 1 over negative 3, this tells us to go up 1 and to the left 3. So this tells us to go up 1. Remember, the top number tells us to go up or down. If it's positive, we go up. If it's negative, we go down. The bottom number tells us to go left or right. If it's positive, we go right. If it's negative, we go left. So from 1, 1, I'm going to go up 1, and I'm going to go right or left 3. 1, 2, 3. Put a point. I can continue that pattern, so I can go up 1, left 3. I cannot continue that pattern because I cannot go left 3 from that. So then I want to go the other direction. So this is where the other part of our slope comes in, where we rewrite it as negative 1 over 3. Same line, same slope, but now it's telling me that I can go down 1 and right 3. Down 1, right 3. Gives us a point there. So if we went down 1 and right 3. And notice that these points are all on the same line. So then I draw my line connecting my points. Okay, so know that every slope can be written 2 ways, and that will help us with finding slope. Alright, to determine slope, this is the question that I would like for you to consider before watching the next video. As usual, please subscribe so that you get updates when new videos are released, and I look forward to hearing from you in the next video.